Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today I'm here with William Santana Lee of Knightscope. William, thank you for joining us.
Greetings from Silicon Valley. How are you, Hall?
I'm doing good. Good to talk with you again today. And so, Bill, what do you think about robotics? What stage are we in at the robotic revolution?
Well, if you believe the media, I think the world's going to end probably by December. The robots are coming. They're going to kill us all. And pretty much even this entire interview is probably going to be handled by two robots. And you and I can just go hang out on the beach somewhere. But I don't know. It's just odd. The way I like to think about it is if you ever try to figure out what is actually happening is just follow the money. And that sometimes might tell you, inform you a little bit of what's really going on. And Hollywood has done a service and a disservice, I think, to the robotics industry. Obviously, has set the bar so high as to what a robot can actually do. And then reality hits. And the reason I point to the money is your listeners might probably know that about $80 billion a year goes into startups. I think last year, 2018, ended at almost $100 billion. So you got about 800 VCs or so dumping $80 to $100 billion a year into startups. And so why does Amazon and like Facebook and Google exist? Well, because, a decade or two ago, a bunch of investors dumped a ton of money into a lot of companies. I forget. I think Google was the 12th, 13th, or 15th search engine, right? There's so many at-bats and billions and billions and billions of dollars. And then finally the team with the right strategy and the right product and the right timing and the right capital won. And now you have Amazon, Google, Facebook, et cetera, right? That's just not the case in the robotics industry. Okay, I'll put you on the spot, Hall. Out of the $80 billion a year, how much do you think goes into robotics? You want to take a guess?
Say 10%.
10%, so $8 billion. Wow. I think you're order of magnitude off, if I'm not mistaken. And you could, depending on how you want to calculate things, the number's probably in the 300 to 500 million.
Oh, wow.
A year.
Thought we were doing a lot more, but I guess we're not.
It's a tiny, look at the profile of the VCs. 90, 95, 98% of them are ex-software folks. No real hardware, roboticists, industrialists in that kind of capital category. So if all the machines are going to show up and kill us, I'm thinking you probably need a good half of that 100 billion. If $50 billion was going into the robotics industry a year, probably some interesting things are going to happen, just like what occurred with Facebook, Amazon, and Google, right? But if the money's not flowing into the sector, the talent's not there, and unfortunately, a lot of the roboticists are very much focused on the technology and not necessarily on a use case for a customer. And you've got a lack of business acumen, you've got a lack of financial resource, and all you have is technology in the laboratory, like you're pre-1970s of the PC industry. You're basically in a hobbyist category. And now, I don't know. I don't see what the media sees or what everyone, and I could be wrong. But I just don't see the capital going in to justify people's perspectives.
Well, certainly the movies have put it way out there of what's going to happen or could happen in the future, and there's a lot of drama that goes around it. But to come back to reality for a minute, what do you see happening in robotics in, say, the next 12 to 24 months? What is reality?
I think a lot of pain and suffering, to be frank. Don't quote me here on actual numbers, but just for some context. Let's say there's a dozen or 24 startups that recently have been funded in the robotics category. Primarily seed stage, Series A kind of investments, primarily from traditional venture capitalists. And you're going to have a bloodbath here in the next 12 to 24 months. And why I say that is because the capital that was ingested by these companies I believe might have been the wrong type of capital for that type of technology. Most of those VCs are trained that, by the time you get to a Series B, like, well, can you show me your 5, 10, $15 million ARR? And then we can do the next round of funding. And almost all those young companies are not going to be able to deliver that. And so you're going to have a huge mismatch of technology, timing, and capital expectations. And unfortunately, a lot of the VCs are going to cut their losses, and those companies are not going to be able to raise the next tranche of capital. And there's going to be some acquisition opportunities, I believe, and then a lot of heartache.
So what would you tell founders of these companies that are working in the robotics fields? What tips do you have for them?
Respectfully, there's a time and place for venture capital. That is not the sole source of capital in the world, right? The global economy is a multi-trillion-dollar bit. I just told you that about 80, 100 billion is VC. It's a tiny, tiny portion. A lot of founders it's beat into them. You need to find product market fit. You need to find product market fit. That's your kind of really what you really need to do. And very little time is spent on capital to company fit. Did you get the right kind of capital for what you're trying to accomplish? So maybe put in a more positive light. If you're working on a social media app and Mark Zuckerberg has Zuckerberg Ventures and he's the general partner and he's there full time now, and he writes you a check and wants a board seat, like, you should just do the deal. Just sign a piece of paper, be done with it. Like, great fit. That person's going to be super valuable. The advice, you should be paying a premium for that kind of capital, and just go do the deal. And yeah, from a governance standpoint, you might have some conflicts, but you should go ahead and do the deal. But if you're in a space where that source of capital has no sector expertise, has no track record in that area, doesn't have the contacts to help you, hasn't been through the process, is worried about all the wrong type of things and asking you all the wrong questions, like, you as an officer of the company, as the founder, you have a fiduciary responsibility to all your shareholders to find the right kind of capital for your business. And in some cases, a VC is not the right kind of capital. So I'm not saying all VCs are bad. There's some awesome, awesome ones out there, and there's a lot of bad ones. But it's just to ask the question, before you take the check, did you get the right money?
So to talk about the robotics industry, what do you think the big challenges in the field are today? What are they trying to overcome in the next 2-3 years that we're going to have to go through a lot of pain? I saw this with the PC industry and the mobile and others. And so I understand the challenges of emerging technology, uneven ecosystems, and lack of skill sets. And there's a lot of reasons why early stage can be tough. But what's particular to robotics? What makes it a tough place to innovate in?
One, it's multidisciplinary. So one of the interview questions sometimes I ask is, okay, to build an unbelievable company, like, what's really important? Pick a functional area. Is it finance? Is it design? Is it technology? You need to have the best culture. You need the best customer service people. You need the best engineers or whatever. And frankly, 90 to 100% of the people pick a functional area. And it drives me crazy because that's like asking a Formula One race car driver, like, can you please tell me what's more important to you? Is it the steering or the brakes? Like, this is a nonsensical conversation. In a lot of cases, our schooling system tries to, and our corporate systems, frankly, breed sector expertise in mechanical or sector expertise in chemical or materials or electrical or software. What makes robotics kind of really cool, as well as the auto industry, frankly, it's a crazy combination of everything. Like, you've got to get the electrical bit, the software bit, the firmware bit, the hardware bit, all to work together at the same time. And you got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And that makes it really interesting. So I think you've got a skill mix gap in some cases for folks that don't think cross-functionally. And then probably the one that's going to drive the industry crazy for the longest of time is just use cases. Just a lot of folks spend a lot of time dumping money into a robotic arm, right? This is my company. I build robotic arms. And I don't want to pick on those folks necessarily, but just to make a point, that in a lot of cases is not a company. that is a feature. And you really need to think through, what is your customer's pain point? What value can you provide? And a lot of folks end up, hey, I couldn't find a customer. I couldn't find a use case for this. We're now a platform company. We're going to be the Android of X. And it's just such an apples and oranges kind of environment that's not always going to work out very well. So finding that use case is kind of really important, and kind of needing to think about things cross-functionally.
I remember in the early days of the PC, there was literally hundreds of PCs out there trying to innovate. And it seems like people were just kind of going horizontally, reinventing the basic PC until the standards were established. There was a Macintosh Apple standard, and there was a IBM standard. And then once we had standards established, all the innovations went on top of one of those platforms. Do you see similar type platforms coming up that could give some cohesion to the innovation, where people don't have to build the basic tools? There's kind of a basic platform, and then they can build on top of that. I've looked at the robotics field, but I'm not close enough to really see what might be common platforms that would give the industries a leg up in that direction.
I think there's probably two ways to look at that. From a software standpoint, there actually has been, and there's a lot of pros and cons here, but the robot operating system, ROS, that was set up has been very helpful to be that at least software platform to help a roboticist get something done, and done quickly and improved. And it's open source, so you get additional improvements over time. There are a lot of folks that have been looking at trying to do that on the hardware side. You got a little bit of a chicken and egg, right? You don't have 100 robotics companies. Like you started with, hey, we had 100 PC companies doing all kinds of stuff. Stuff was selling. There was a marketplace. There was volume. There was revenue. And now you can actually go look and see, hey, how is this customer using it? How is that customer using it? Oh, why don't we go standardize, right? But you don't even have that right now. You're dealing with the kind of pre-phase of that, where there aren't 100 robotics companies pushing out technology that everyone's using, and now we should start looking at standardizing. Some of the issues, for example, just on power, just basic issues like battery power or the equivalent is a big issue, but you've got different use cases, indoors, outdoors, your form factor. Someone pitched me a deal where they wanted to do a hardware platform where they would handle all the motors and gears and everything else, and you just build on it. And there's been a lot of those, more than a handful have tried. But you're trying to build a platform for an industry that frankly doesn't exist yet. I mean, as harsh as that might sound.
So it's still too early days to see standardized platforms come up, because the technology is either very nascent or the target applications aren't clearly defined yet. You can put robotics in just about anything, but what makes financial sense to put them in would be the next question. Where do you think you'll see the biggest wins coming up in the next 5 years from an application point of view inside the field of robotics?
Well, I think Amazon probably propel things a lot on the warehouse side of things, where you've got an actual use case. You can help a human process stuff that much more quickly. And there's a lot of now warehouse robot startups that have been at it, and there's a beginning of an industry there. And the rest are kind of super niche-y special applications type of stuff. I mean, there's some really cool stuff going on. I just think it's kind of early days. On the agriculture side of things, there's some automation. Obviously, we believe in the security industry, there's a lot of automation that's going to be coming forward. But anything that's monotonous and maybe computationally heavy that no human could ever possibly do, or it's, people like to say, dull, dirty, and dangerous, is going to be an opportunity. But for the folks that think like we're going to have a humanoid robot show up and do firefighting for you at the local fire station, we're a very, very, very long ways away from that happening.
Well, it seems like human augmentation seems to be a winning strategy. What is a human doing now, and how can robotics augment them versus replace them? What's your take on that?
Depends. The world's not homogenous, so in some cases, for our clients at Knightscope on the security side, maybe I'll use that as a quick example, I would say a majority of our clients are adding security technology to give their teams more tools for them to cover an area that they're missing, have an exposure, or they don't have enough budget and need something really efficient. So yeah, it's an augmentation. But we do have a lot of some existing clients and some very large incoming clients that are like, I need to replace that slot. And, if I'm spending $150 million a year on security guards and their latest technology is basically you've got a number 2 pencil and a notepad to keep track of things, like that's a problem. And the industry is also a problem in just the employee turnover rates. It's 100 to 400%. So every quarter or every year, you're going to get a whole new team. And this is like worse than the fast food industry. So then you got to sit back and go, do you actually have a viable job for a human to be doing at 3 o'clock in the morning in a parking lot, staring at the windshield? So there's a lot of interesting questions, but like a lot of things in life, it's not black or white, it's in between, and you're going to get a little bit of everything.
Well, great. Well, in the last few minutes we have here, what else should we cover about robotics that we haven't?
Well, I think one is just reiterate for the founders out there is to really focus on an important use case. I think for Knightscope, we're not a robotics company necessarily. We're advanced physical security company, and we have this slightly ambitious goal to make the United States of America the safest country in the world. And if we can do that with self-driving technology, with robotics and AI, we'll be all the better for it. I just hope that the investors listening see that, yes, there's a huge, huge opportunity here. But if you want to see that change, you need to put the capital into those companies for them to be able to execute. You're not going to get the equivalent of an Amazon, Facebook, or Google on the robotics side of things if there's no fuel to go deliver that mission.
Great. Well, appreciate having you on today and sharing your thoughts about the robotics space, and hope to have you back soon for another interview.
Thank you so much, Hall.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.